Hey guys, welcome to my September reading wrap-up. Now, for the last number of months, I've been filming clips after I finish books, and September was just a different month. I didn't film any clips, so I'm going to be telling you all about the books that I read in the last month right now. But I want to talk about why my month felt so off, because every now and then I freak out and I'm like, do I even like reading when I have like a really off month? And September was just weird. And I think I can pinpoint like a few different things that messed up my reading month. So I just want to share about them and then kind of help myself realize like this is not forever. I already think October has been better, but there have been a couple different things that happened in September that affected my reading month. I read way less than normal as a result. Number one of my kids is now in traditional school. It's been years and years and years since I dealt with the school system, and I was regretting it before they were even in. It just took so much of my brain power. It took me like 3 different trips to find the right school supplies, a whole afternoon to figure out the busing situation, like not my cup of tea. So I had like a lot of that going on. Another thing is we started our homeschool year, which we've had the best first month of our homeschool that we've had in a long time, but it was just, you know, more work. It took more of my time. But I think the biggest thing that affected my reading is, and this, it's funny to say because I gave most of the books that I read this month 4 stars on Goodreads. So it's like I didn't dislike the books, but most of the books I had to read for some reason or another. I think there was one book that was just for myself, and it's the book that I ended up enjoying the most, not necessarily the book that I rated the highest. Well, actually maybe so, because I do rate books based on how much I enjoyed them. And I also, part of that is I also read a bunch of ebooks, and I don't enjoy reading ebooks. They always, like, I think I probably rate them half a star lower because it's just not an enjoyable format for me. So that's a little bit of like why my reading month felt so off. Definitely the like having to read, and I mean like having to read. No one was holding a gun to my head saying I had to read these books, but I realized for October that I don't like that, and I mostly just want to read books that I'm interested in at the moment. So I've tried to scale back, and there was only, well, there was kind of like 2 books that I had to read. It's really the one that I'm reading with my patron of the month. The other ones are kind of all like, if I don't get to it, it's fine. So I have my Goodreads up because I read so many ebooks. I wanted to make sure I wasn't forgetting anything, and also because it's been a month, I forget so much, and I'm going to apologize because I'm not going to be able to describe many of these books well, I feel like, which October I'm already starting to film clips. If you prefer that format, let's just suffer through this video, and we'll get back into routine for October. But the first book that I read in September was the one I enjoyed the most because it was random. I just picked it up, wanted to read it, and that is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So I shared a little bit of my reading of this book in a video at the beginning of September, and I shared it in my clean fantasy recommendations. So our main character, she's the daughter of the Moon Goddess. The Moon Goddess has been banished to the moon for a number of years, and her daughter ends up, for various reasons, having to flee the moon. She ends up in the celestial kingdom, and she wants to become this great warrior to be able to free her mother. And lots of stuff goes on. It's a fantasy story. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars. This, I think, will be a trilogy, or it will at least be 3 books. Book 3, I think, is coming out in the next few months. I want to continue the series, but there were some twists in here that I didn't see coming. Some things that I really like to see in books that happened. Yeah, one of the great quotes here was, "The most difficult things are often the most worthwhile." There's also some really good humor. Our main character, whose name, like, I'm not even going to try to pronounce, she says to this other, this person that's a soldier, she says, "Do you enjoy being a celestial soldier?" "Who wouldn't?" she said with a straight face. "It's marvelous being ordered about most of the time, expected to obey without question, getting thrashed during training, and feeling lucky when you don't wind up dead from an assignment." I recoiled. "It sounds dreadful." "I haven't told you the best part. Do you see what we have to wear? She poked at her armor. It's heavier than it looks, if that's possible. And when we walk, we clank like pots and pans. It's a good thing we're taught to conceal the sound from our enemies. Yeah, so there was like some humor, which I like to see in books. I really did enjoy it. I'm just so scared that the series isn't going to continue as well, but I will continue it one day. Okay, the next book I read was Half a World Away. This was my patron's pick of the month. We read it together. I get a lot out of buddy reading books, but I don't like to do it very much because I'm not very good at it. I feel like I always either get ahead or behind or don't have things to say. This one was kind of interesting. So we followed Jaden. The adoption side of this is just all fascinating. He was adopted years ago from, I want to say like Romania, one of those European countries. Now his parents are going back to the same country or one of the ones around there to adopt a baby. And he feels like he obviously wasn't good enough. They have to adopt another one. There is a lot of like trauma stuff in here. It's interesting, like Jaden was adopted at the age of 8. And then obviously they're trying to adopt a baby now. And as an adoptive parent, there was some interesting things, some parallels to our own adoption, some things that were very different. The adoption agency in here goes out of business, which totally happened to us when we were adopting. Jaden needs an unusual amount of sleep every night, like 12 hours, which is pretty much what my son does almost every night, and he's not even a teenager yet. So like there were some interesting things, but there are some things that really irritated me as well, which I feel like I can't get into a whole lot without giving spoilers because they're kind of a little bit later on. And I feel like there was a few things that weren't resolved. So it was interesting, but not my favorite. After that, I read You Are a Theologian, An Invitation to Know and Love God Well by Jen Wilkin and J.T. English. Now, keep in mind that I was reading this via Kindle. I think it just came out in July, so I was reading it on NetGalley. But I had also just earlier this year read Every Woman a Theologian, and You Are a Theologian was just a little bit more like who God is. I feel like the other one, Every Woman a Theologian, covered more theology, and after reading that one I was just expecting more from this, so it wasn't bad. I was constantly comparing the two and found the other one to be better. Then I read Yours is the Night by Amanda Dykes. This was my Read Your Bookshelf Challenge book for the month, and I read the first page and it took me a while to pick it up again because there's a mathematical error in the first paragraph. We're set October 24th, 1921, and it says October 24th, 1918. It says 4 years ago to the day, but actually that's 3 years. Ooh, suddenly I got bright. It was just like this error shining in my face like the sun, and I had a really hard time continuing the story, even though I love Amanda Dykes and her writing. I struggled after that for some reason. So this is the story of World War I. We mostly follow Matthew Pettigrew, and we also follow a woman named Mira. So, man, I feel like I always struggle. Oh my goodness. I always struggle explaining her books, but this one more so because I didn't have that like connection with her book that I normally do. It didn't feel as lyrical and poetic as hers often do, so that was kind of disappointing for me. But this woman, Mira, she lives in the woods in France, and the French and German soldiers, or like French, but like the Americans and all the Allied forces and the Axis forces are like fighting like pretty much her house is kind of on the boundary, and so the the American guys try to take her to safety and things unfold. Yeah, I would say so far it's my least favorite of her books, but like I've really enjoyed her other ones, and that first paragraph for whatever reason just really tainted my reading experience, which is too bad. I mean, I make mistakes all the time. I can't talk properly. I can't do math, but for some reason I was just really hung up on that one. Then I read this book, which I did listen to the audiobook just to know how to pronounce it. I think it's Calor. So this is a Enclave Publishing fantasy trilogy. It's the Nightingale trilogy, and I started this one because I am part of the Enclave street team for this little season, and I was going to be getting book 2 in the series via ebook, like an advanced reader's copy, so I wanted to read book 1 first. And I did enjoy it, but it was just like, I kind of felt like I had to read it so I could read book 2, which I'm still actually in the middle of. So it's just, as soon as there's that pressure on me, I am such a rebel at heart, even with the traditional school thing. It's like, I don't want to follow what the traditional school tells me I need to do. I want to homeschool so I can do my own thing. I have my issues. Anyway, so this is kind of like, it's fantasy, but it's dystopian because this current world that we live in has passed away. And it is the world that was gone. And so in this later world, some people have like special powers. They're called alters, and depending what the power is, they can do different things. So our main character, her name is Stephanie Winter, and one thing she can do is when she touches like her skin to someone else's skin, she can go inside their mind and see people's memories. Okay, here it says she can also manipulate memories to numb the darkest secrets. So a lot of rich people use her powers. She's currently a slave at the beginning of the book. The rich people use her powers to erase the terrible things they've done, and then she has to have that in her memory as a result. But something happens right at the beginning, and she flees this land. And yeah, it's been a good journey. I don't know, I did enjoy this one. I am enjoying book 2, but once again, reading the ebook. So I don't know, I don't feel like I have a lot to say about it for some reason, but I will say, I did share this on Instagram already, but this is the best bio that I've ever read from an author. It's hilarious. Then I finished the book Finding the Right Hills to Die On, The Case for a Theological Triage. I started this one in July. We were reading it for a book club for my church. The second half, well, I was sick when I was reading the first half, so I don't know how much of that had to do with it. Plus I listened to the audiobook. Second half, I got the ebook and was feeling healthy. I enjoyed the second half more. It kind of talks about like the 3 different tiers of different, what was the terminology now? He says, using 4 basic categories of doctrine in order of importance, this book helps new and seasoned church leaders alike wisely labor both to uphold doctrine and preserve unity. So it was very interesting because he took like specific examples, like, you know, these are very important theological issues. These are the hills to die on. These ones, it depends how things are being played out, and like these ones don't really matter. Like, yes, they affect the way that you worship and do things, but they're not really the hills to die on. So it was a good book. Because I was sick reading that first half, I think that really played into it. Then I read the reading list. So this was my in-person book club for the month. Yeah, this is a popular book, and I didn't know how I was going to feel going into it. Oh, I don't even know. I feel like the author was trying to make a bestseller. She's like, what would bookish people like? Oh yeah, they would like a book about books, and I'm gonna like just twist a knife in there for fun to make it something they remember. And I did like the bookish references. She's got a reading list that the characters start reading through, and our characters are going through tough times, and so it is cool that they kind of form a bond around books. But she does something quite into the book, so I won't say anything specific, and I feel like it was a cheap shot is how I feel. I feel like it shouldn't have been in there. The book would have been better without that, and it didn't have that resolution I liked because of it. And I'm sorry I'm being vague if you haven't read the book, but I think I thought it was gonna go somewhere else, and I think that would have made a better book, honestly. So there's that. And then I finished, actually in between here somewhere, I finished a book that a friend's son is currently writing. He's currently writing a fantasy story, so I was a beta reader. So that was like another book that I said I was going to read. It was well done. He's still working on it, so once he actually like wants to publish it, I'll share more. But I read another book in there that was an ebook. I felt like I had to read because I said I was going to, and then I couldn't even mark it on Goodreads. So just like, I don't know, it was a weird month. And then the last book is Pat of Silver Bush. Now I won't really say anything about this one because Amy and I did a whole live about the book. Overall, definitely not my most favorite of Ellen Montgomery's books. It took me about halfway to like really get into it. There's a character that has this accent that drove me nuts, and then I realized I could pretty much just skip her paragraphs and then things got better. But yeah, you can go back and watch our entire live for that because we discussed it at length. This is a duology, and I have book 2, and I will read it. It got better, that's for sure. And whenever I say that, I think of the Monty Python, She Turned Me Into a Newt. Random reference. If you can understand that reference, I don't know what that says about us, but I say that often and I always think of that. She turned me into a newt. It got better. That's my physical stack for the month. I'm looking forward to October and just reading different books. So let me know how your September went. Did you have a better month than I did? Any of the same issues that I had? I'd be curious to hear them. Thanks for being here, guys.